I have been here for 15 years. I am professor of speech communication studies. I coordinate the speech communication studies program, and then I also direct the forensic and debate program and founded the Pi Kappa Delta chapter here. I've been in Pi Kappa Delta since I was a freshman in college in the fall of 1981. And since then, as a competitor, I happened to go to a small school that was very dedicated to the idea of Pi Kappa Delta and knew that I wanted to teach. And so I sort of took that upbringing with me into graduate school, found a strong Pi Kappa Delta chapter as a graduate student, and then made sure that my first job was going to be somewhere where I could continue the Pi Kappa Delta tradition. Interestingly enough, my first job was somewhere where they were going to be hosting the Pi Kappa Delta National Tournament. So my first year in full-time employment was helping to host the big national tournament. I wanted to find something that allowed me to feel like I had a voice, that I had a talent, and was able to hone that talent. I loved sports, but I was never very good at it. And then I blew my knee out in middle school, and so that made that decision pretty easy. And then somebody told me about debate, and so I joined it, not really knowing what I was getting into. But I loved the idea that I was learning something, and I loved the fact that what I was learning in that competitive environment, the competitive environment being the most important thing for me as a high school sophomore. What I soon learned is that I was learning things that I could take at home and enrich my relationships with my parents and with my other friends. And then when I went into college, I had no idea of the kind of benefits that I was getting just from looking for something that I could compete in. I think the most important thing we do in this activity is afford students an opportunity to grow in their confidence, to have an opportunity to be heard, and to have an opportunity to express their ideas in ways that are unique and special to them, with no prior restraint and with no expectation. There are lots of different programs. Our program is one that tries to de-emphasize the competitive element and tries to emphasize the outcomes of education and personal growth. And we find that our students are competitively successful because they're coming in and able to find their voices and celebrate those more personal kinds of accomplishments. They work hard, they get bit by that bug, and as they work harder, they naturally get better. And the tangible awards follow suit pretty naturally. But the relationships that we build with students and students looking back and realizing how much they grew, that's what's really special about what we do. I've always been dedicated to a comprehensive approach to forensics, and that's really what I think makes PICAP really special, is that it celebrates the full breadth of the activity. Whether you are an oral interpretation performer, whether you are a public address speaker, whether you are a debater, Pi Kappa Delta provides an umbrella in which you can do all of those things. And I think it encourages those things. While we have students that will specialize, the very nature of our tournament experience is such that we promote the idea that there is value in all that we do. Our activity is pretty fragmented. And there are countless national tournaments, countless associations that all crown national champions in different events. That specialization is exciting because it proves that forensics is very healthy. And that's the upside. I think sometimes the downside is that it perpetuates a kind of specialization that de-emphasizes the value of experiencing a breadth of opportunities to learn how to express yourself in different ways. So that's really the tension, whether it's speech or whether it's debate or whether it's forensics. And of course, it doesn't help that shows like Quincy and the TV gives us a different idea of what forensics is. Every year we get somebody that joins the team that because they thought they were going to get to do some fingerprinting or play with corpses or some of that cool morbid kind of stuff, and then we have to educate them and tell them that's not us. Well, speech or what we call individual events, is really the sort of the term of art in the competitive environment, is a collection of interpretation and public speaking activities. And so students are either writing and memorizing their own speeches or performing the literature that other people have written, either in duo, in dual, two-person events, or in one-person events. And there are typically about 11 of those that most tournaments offer, and it's a pretty even split between interpretation events and public speaking events. Forensics really is sort of the umbrella term. I mean, really what we have are forensic programs that either debate and or do individual events. I think largely it's a problem. It's a semantic problem because people have a different idea of what forensics is, and so people relate more to speech and debate. And so I think a lot of programs use that language because it's more relatable. When debate started, there were very few events. Even with individual events, there were very few events in which people could participate. And now at our national Pi Kappa Delta tournament, we offer, fewer than 5 or 6 different forms of debate. I think it's changed in the skills that students are able to learn, depending on the format that they choose. Some are geared more toward a balance of persuasive presentation and critical analytical thinking. Some celebrate more of an emphasis on information processing. And I think programs are afforded an opportunity to pick the format that is best suited for their student body and the resources of their program and where their program travels. So I guess that's the change, is that it's both good and bad, I think, is that it's become very fragmented with lots and lots of opportunities. The Pi Kappa Delta programs that I think of as consistently successful would include, most recently, Ohio University, William Carey University, Bowling Green State University, certainly Southwest Baptist University. Those are programs that typically do very well comprehensively. Those are programs that enter both debate and individual events competitions. I think program success is sort of like a snowball. I think it's very much a spiral effect. Once you're able to establish a formula for success, if you're fortunate enough to have a supportive university environment that will help you to bring in talented students and support the activities of those students, then it's hard to turn that success around. I think it starts with a dedicated staff that's able to work with and nurture students, and a university environment that will support the growth of that program consistently. When I recruit a student, I first and foremost look for a student who is open to challenges, is willing to be creative, is willing to test themselves and learn what their voice sounds like. It's a bonus if that student has some high school experience or some junior college experience if they come in with a record of success. But we've been fortunate enough to find students that come in with no forensic experience at all and end up being some of the most successful students we've had. Largely because they're willing to listen, they're willing to be open-minded. It's really hard to be successful in forensics and not be open to ideas. And interestingly, some of the most talented students that we've had, some of the brightest students we've had, have left our program because of a dogma, because of an unwillingness to open minds to the different things that they have to debate, to different experiences, whether it be where we might eat, something as simple as going to Louisiana and trying crawfish, or debating issues of social entitlement when you are against social entitlement. It runs the gamut. But I think forensics is about diversity. Forensics is about exposure. Diversity of ideas, diversity of people, diversity of experience. That's the neatest thing about what we do. I think the most epistemic aspects of our activity is not what happens in the tournament environment, but it's what happens on the van and in the hotel room and in the practice sessions, traveling with people you've never met before, learning about different cultures, learning about different experiences. a liberal meeting a conservative, a Catholic meeting an atheist, whatever those experiences might be. That's the neatest thing about what we do. Well, in a general sense, first person that comes to mind is Bill Clinton, because he was so effective at, and remains effective at appealing to an audience. He's personable. He comes off as sincere. He's intelligent, and first and foremost, he's respectful. It always struck me that he was able to work with people across the aisle, and even the people that chastised him and wanted nothing more than for him to leave the office, of the presidency. He was still able to accomplish things, not because there's all that power in the Oval Office, but because you have to work with people who believe different things. I just think he was an incredibly effective communicator. Student-wise, probably one of 2 or 3 students that I worked with in Louisiana, actually. And in particular, there's one person that comes to mind. His name's Jarvis. Jarvis was really effective. And in fact, now he's running for DA, district attorney, where he lives in Texas. He was just persistent. He came in as a freshman, had an incredible amount of talent, and he and his partner were one of the top novice teams in the country, and never really had to work real hard to be successful. And I remember the first tournament that he went to where they didn't advance to finals, and it was a shock to him, because he was now not debating, and he didn't really know what that was like, and picked it up. He had an opportunity to sort of take it to a next level, or sort of rest on his laurels, and he took it to the next level. And I don't know that I've known a debater who's worked harder, who's had to overcome not profound, but challenging enough communication traits that made it hard for him to be persuasive. And in the end, won an All-American award, and was the first person from McNeese State, where I used to coach, was the first person to advance to an elimination round at a debate national tournament. And it was because of a work ethic and because of a perseverance. And fundamentally, he was just a good kid. I mean, just had a big heart, outstanding character, and just a perfect blend of all of that. To be a successful debater, you have to work hard. You have to know what's going on in the world. You have to open your mind to perspectives on what's going on in the world. And then you have to be able to find the truth, which is usually somewhere in the middle, and be able to understand what your sense of the truth is based on those perspectives, and be able to articulate that. Really outstanding debaters, I think, are able to do that in a way that balances, and it's a delicate balance, self-confidence with respect for the other person. The good debater is one who's willing to make the argument and not back off of it, and make it in a way that makes you not even think twice about that being the truth, but at the same time respecting the inevitable challenge to that argument. I think that's an outstanding debater. So they're good listeners, they're intelligent, they're good critical thinkers, and they're open. It wasn't funny at the time, but looking back, it was funny because it was stupid. We took a student that we had on our team here who was legally blind, nearly legally deaf, and spoke with a cleft palate. He joined our debate team. He wanted to debate in high school, and they told him no. So he came here and wanted to debate. And we said, absolutely. You tell us what you need, and we're going to make it work. We took him to New Orleans for the Mardi Gras tournament. And that tournament is in Baton Rouge, but they always end the day early, so you can go down to a parade. And we had our kids with us as well. So at that point, we had one child with us, and she was our daughter was about 2, I guess, 2 or 3. And so we went to a parade, and we were told, here's the place you go. It's nice, family friendly. And we didn't find that place. Instead, we found a place on Lee Circle. And so behind us is a solid brick wall, and in front of us is the street, and there's nothing in between. And it all seemed fine until about an hour or so after we got there, and then it started filling up, and I had this crazy cat in the hat. Somebody came and grabbed it, and then people were pushing us, and and Jeff was there, and our daughter was there, and we had this concern about what in the world have we done, and we were so fearful for Jeff and for Megan, and my wife found a place to go with Megan, but we were worried about Jeff. And about that time, Jeff says, hey, what's going on? Somebody take my cane. Where is he? I'll hit him. Jeff didn't care. Jeff didn't care at all. He was so comfortable because he was able to be in a place where, he could just be himself, where he wasn't restricted. He didn't have people telling him what he couldn't do. And looking back, it was funny that we did that. Funny, stupid funny. And that's still one of the neatest memories that I have, is Jeff just being the only one that was perfectly comfortable with where he was, despite the fact that everybody else was scared to death. And it ended up being fine. I mean, there were no incidents at all, but it's just the idea that we were in an environment where we suddenly realized we've got a blind man, and we've got to take care of him. And we use this metaphor here at Webster of our program being a family. And it's literal and figurative. I mean, our kids have always traveled with us. They've grown up knowing the college kids and hanging with the college kids. And we've always tried to really emphasize team over individual. Our point being that if you work hard for the person next to you, then that hard work will pay off in individual accolades. But more importantly, it will help build a unit that lets us celebrate together, and we don't leave people aside on the outside looking in when we celebrate. So that's always been an ethic that's been really important to us. It's also been important that all throughout in the last, 20 years of my professional career, I've been able to coach with my wife. We've coached together. And so it lets us take an activity that can be very challenging for personal lives and make it something that lets us celebrate our life together. And we're the only husband and wife pair that's ever both been president of the organization. And being able to be there and induct her, and read the oath, and be the first person to congratulate her was it's just something that very few people would ever get to do. I think one reason the Pi Kappa has endured as long as it has is because it has rolled with the culture of the broader culture of the forensic activity. As things change, Pi Kappa has embraced that. And we haven't always embraced the culture. There are things that happen at other tournaments that we don't do at our tournament because we don't feel like it's consistent with who we are. And I think that's been smart. I think that helps us to maintain a core of programs that can consistently say that their programs mirror the mission and the philosophy of Pi Kappa Delta. And so there's that strong tradition that has a flexibility when necessary. In 2000, we introduced a different national tournament that was alternating years with our convention and tournament. That was one of the smarter things we've ever done because it responded to a need. It was a very different change for us, but we were willing to make that change. We were willing to hold our breath and think outside of the box. And I think we're able. Pi Kappa has always been able to do that while not losing sight of the core of what makes Pi Kappa Delta the unique organization that it is. I think forensics is healthy. I think forensics is at an important defining point. I think that forensics, in my vision, is first and foremost an educational activity that has a competitive outlet. I think that it's time for us to step back and recognize and sort of re-embrace that mission of education. And I think even the most successful coaches competitively embrace the idea of education. But I think it's a good time for us to step back and ask what we do and why we do it. Pi Kappa Delta has been involved in that activity, I think, in that process of introspection, and consequently we've looked beyond where we have been. And I think other organizations are engaging in a similar kind of self-discovery. But I think it's healthy. I think that there are lots of schools competing in debate and individual events. There are lots of national tournaments that are thriving. So I think it's a cautiously healthy point in time. But I think as colleges become more concerned, rightfully so, with outcomes and assessment, our activity has to wrap our arms around what we do and why we do it, and does it matter and why does it matter. I think Pi Kappa Delta is in a great spot. We're bridging important relationships with the high school forensic community. We are sort of recognizing and celebrating the core of who we are and the traditions that have helped us sustain us for 100 years. But we're also doing some new and exciting things. We're adding different events to our tournament. We just had an online event at the tournament we had 2 weeks ago, and so we're embracing the changes in how society communicates. I think we're at a point where other schools are recognizing the value that Pi Kappa Delta offers, and in fact, in some cases, leaving certain organizations and coming to Pi Kappa Delta because we are more closely aligned with that balance of education and competition and service. So I think Pi Kappa Delta is in a great place. I think our leadership has done a great job of positioning us to be able to adapt to changes and challenges that face the college, university community in general, and to make sure that Pi Kappa Delta remains a vibrant part of the forensic part of that culture.